Okay. Um, okay. So this is a little tool that we put together to allow people to have a saying on how grants are ranked on Gitcoin when a grant round starts. The problem right now is that when you start, there's sort of a horse race where the grants that get funding in the beginning tend to be at the top of the results. And then because they're at the top of the results, they tend to get more and more funding. So this was an idea or an experiment to try and give an alternative sorting to the grants on the Gitcoin page. And we decided to use conviction voting because it has some benefits compared to the normal token voting, where one token is equal one vote. And the idea here is that you can let people with even small amounts have a bigger impact as long as they keep the tokens staked over time. The way this works is, and you can kind of see it here, this number will change every once in a while. You stake an amount, and then over time off chain, we calculate your voting power using some sort of exponential function. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Silence. Okay.
Sure
Yes.
does. Sure
Perfect.
does. Yes.
Okay. So silence means yes. Okay. So this is what the UI looks like, and it's the live one. I already staked a couple of things in mainnet. The grants are from a database dump that we took. Actually, I was going to say we took a while ago, but I just refreshed it before this call. So the grants are actually up to date. They are randomly shuffled here. We didn't want to we didn't want to give any influence or any bias to whoever was coming and staking. So the grants are in a completely random order. If you refresh, you should get a different set. Um, and it's unlikely you will see the same ones popping up again. It is consistent through pagination though. So if you keep scrolling, you will never see the same grant twice. And this is for the UI. There's a simple search which does what you think it would do. You search for scaffold ETH and you find either scaffold ETH or projects that were built with scaffold ETH. Um, and then as for staking, we support staking on mainnet and on Optimism. And I will switch to Optimism for this. I already staked something and I don't have that much GTC up here, but let's see, I'll just randomly pick a couple of grants or three just to show what the experience is like. And I can now go into my card and decide how much I want to stake per each grant here. Something like that. Here I can see again my balance and how much, oh, it just updated. So this is how much I have on Optimism. Yeah, so I can see my balance and how much I'm staking total. And then clicking here, I'm asked to essentially first approve and then actually stake. This is a two transaction thing. So first you approve the contract to actually spend GTCs on your behalf. And then once that transaction is finalized, which Optimism is incredibly fast apparently, you actually do stake. And then you return to the home. And here, this will take a little time, like a few seconds. It's much faster on mainnet. The subgraph, this information comes from a subgraph. So once you stake, we emit an event, and we do the same when you unstake. And those events are indexed in the subgraph. Mainnet is much faster than Optimism for some reason. So on Optimism, it takes a good 10 seconds, sometimes more, to get the new grants to show up. But eventually they will. On mainnet is a couple of seconds. Yeah, this is taking longer. There you go. And those are the grants. The three at the top are the ones that actually this one, and I think this one are the ones that I just staked on. And if I want to unstake, it's a similar experience. I can select which ones I want to unstake from. And by the way, right now I'm only seeing the grants that I have on Optimism. If I want to see the grants that I staked on, on mainnet, I need to switch And we do that because it would be really confusing to see some grants that you cannot unstake unless you switch network, and handling the network switch with multiple transactions. That would just be pretty terrible in terms of UX. So we settled for that. But anyways, here I can unstake, and that will just start another transaction. And once the transaction finalizes and these numbers update, you will see the green pointer become a red pointer and being pointed downwards, because when you unstake, you don't completely lose the voting power that you had accumulated up to that point, but it starts decreasing using a decay function. There you go. So these will now start going down every few seconds, and which means you're losing voting power on that grant, and the tokens have already been returned to your wallet. Eventually, these will update with the, actually, this is already 9, so yeah, this is already updated with the original value. Did that make sense? Questions?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have a question. What is there, like, so now that you have it staked and there's a conviction scoring mechanism, does that, like, is that integrated back to like Gitcoin.co? So like if I'm going back to view the grants on Gitcoin.co to fund a grant, what does that look like? How are those two put together, if that makes sense?
So there is an integration, but it doesn't seem to be working properly. We landed a PR, I think this morning. You can select Gitcoin GTC conviction voting, and this is supposed to rank based on the scores from that app. But it doesn't seem to be working the way it should. There might still be some bug to iron out on the script that basically pulls the votes from the graph and calculates the scores.
And the desired outcome you were thinking there was the grants with the highest conviction score would be
at the top.
Yeah, exactly. And then ranking them from top to bottom. That makes sense. Okay, that's awesome.
And yeah, for your unstaking function, you do all or none, correct?
For the unstaking function is all or none, yes. So even if you stake multiple times on a token, when you go to unstake, we unstake.
It's taking it all.
Everything, yeah, on a token, sorry, on a grant, but yes, it's unstaking them all.
Okay.
Was there like a specific reason why you did all or none for unstaking? I'd love to know more about that.
It was just easier to implement, and this was it started as a prototype, so we just left it as that. With more time, because we were also trying to get this ready for grant round 14. With more time, we can do it where you can choose how much you want to unstake. But
yeah, that's kind of the reason I asked, because I've been looking at doing a function to stake by an amount, and it's a lot more difficult than just removing all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a softball question, hopefully, for you. If any of us are GTC holders and we want to stake on a specific grant, how would we do that? What is the URL that one of us would need to go to actually participate in this staking? Just voting.gitcoin.co?
Yeah, it's just here, voting.gitcoin.co. I think it's only been advertised by Austin and possibly Kevin on Twitter. I don't know if this is reachable from anywhere within the Gitcoin main website. I don't think so. But yes, this is where you would go, voting.gitcoin.co.
One thing that I was wondering, and just kind of after like seeing this in the last few days, so if you stake your GTC here, what effects does that have on any GTC you have staked for like in Tally for like governance votes, right? Or like, is that double approval then pulling your ability to like have your GTC delegated through Tally?
Yeah, so effectively you're transferring your GTC to the contract. If you go to the contract, you will see that it has like 50K GTC. I checked this morning. So essentially, yes, you are losing the voting power, or you are undelegating that amount essentially from Tally. There's different lines of thought here. Some people say you should still be able to vote. Some people say this is conviction voting, so you should lock your tokens, and yeah, you lose voting power. Right now, you lose voting power. I don't know how these could be implemented in a way that you don't lose voting power, because when you stake, you actually transfer the tokens. So the moment you do that, now is the contract that has them, and because the delegation is from an address to another address, if I try to do it from the contract, I would delegate for the entirety of the amount that's in the contract. So it's not so easy. At least I cannot see an easy way to do it.
One thing to note, Emo, we do have, so there's a difference between on-chain voting and off-chain voting, right? Like for the on-chain voting, you're wrecked. Like you can't, as soon as you move the tokens into a contract, like you don't own those to be able to sign with those. But the nice thing is with Snapshot, Snapshot is like off-chain voting, you're signing instead. We could set up a strategy that looks for the GTC that you have staked, and it gives you that same sort of voting power. Now, it doesn't honor delegation. So like if you delegate to me, as soon as you move it to the contract, it resets that delegation and I lose that GTC as a signer. But what we could still do is set up a snapshot strategy that enables you to still vote with your GTC, because the contract recognizes you as the owner of that GTC still. Gitcoin actually has this set up for those that stake in a uni load balancer pool, as well as in balancer pools. There's one other one that we set up as well, but we just would have to work with, I think, maybe the Snapshot folks to help us get that strategy set up. But then you could still participate in off-chain voting, like Snapshot votes yourself. You just lose your delegation.
That would make sense, I guess. What about optimism though? Because there's also that part. These GTCs that I'm taking right now are on a different network. I don't know if, I guess you can do that, the same thing with Snapshot.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't have any strategies in place right now for tokens that are on L2s. I don't know. I'm sort of like a governance noob in like how a Snapshot manages that. Like if they look to L2s whenever they pull signing authorities as well. My suspicion is it's all just layer ones, but given the L2 world we're headed towards, I feel like it'll be interesting to kind of understand and debug that a bit.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So where do we draw the line on this, on what you stake on and don't get to use for other voting powers? I get this. This makes sense. Like one, you're staking it on something that's doesn't have anything to do with votes. Therefore, you retain voting power outside of that in governance. But like, just curious, like where we start to like draw these lines of when your convicted staking amount doesn't get to be used and other things to vote for.
Is that a question for me? Because I feel that's
like
a question for.
That's a philosophical question. Just throwing it out in the air for anyone to pick up or toss or give their opinion on or whatever.
That, yeah.
I say that because I'm thinking about staking, a lot of staking mechanisms that we're thinking about in identity. So now we're talking about staking mechanisms where you're staking into a. We're talking about staking on identity, staking on a project, staking in like a particular vote. I just see a lot of staking going around, and I'm wondering like where do these all cross? Like where do we like, I don't know, just thinking out loud.
Is it like an opportunity cost that you just have, like if you stake in one area, then obviously that you don't have that stake anymore for other opportunities, like just weigh that out.
Which makes you want to like be very careful about your opportunities to stake, right? Like it makes what you stake that much more serious. If you
I do think without a strong user benefit, like you're just not going to see adoption. So in this particular case, like I love that we are trying out the conviction voting to help improve the sort order. Like candidly, I feel like it's a decent use case, but like if as a user I can participate in perhaps some of the matching pool funds that someone puts to that grant because I helped elevate them, or I'm increasing their matching pool contributions by doing that for the grant. Like if there's some like either intrinsic or extrinsic value to those actions, there's a higher likelihood of people taking that. staking on identity is easy because it increases the impact in theory, like my trust bonus, the amount of matching pool funds I can enable someone to give. It's like I have an intrinsic value in doing that. But curating grants where I earn part of the matching pool funds gives me an extrinsic value. Like, like, okay, I'll stake 100 GTC and then I can get back $20 for helping improve that grant's, ranking in the view. Like, that seems like an also good extrinsic motivation. So anything that lacks like deep intrinsic or extrinsic motivation might be interesting and totally novel and worth exploring, but like might not see mass adoption.
Yep. I can see that adoption barrier.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think one insight I had here is that when we're talking about your delegation and your voting power, we're talking about your whole bag, like all of your GTC, right? But really all we need here is just a little bit of signal. And it reminds me kind of the Gitcoin matching in the first place. Like, people aren't sending hundreds of dollars to projects. People are sending $1 USD and $5 USD, right? Because it's all signal. It's not even really about that $5 USD. It's the signal that that $5 USD creates. So I think in this case, we should have, just like one thing that we should have done a little bit better, probably me tweeting it. I should have tweeted something about like, a little bit goes a long way here. And this is a signal heavy thing. And we're just going to read signal. And it's about locking up 5 GTC for your favorite streams, not your whole bag. Like, keep the rest of it for voting, but use a little bit just to YOLO into this contract as signal. But I also love the idea of like also having it be a stock market and paying back to the people who picked out the right ones or something like that. Like that now we're getting into real Ethereum territory there.
And it could even go like into retroactive public goods funding, right? Like, oh, I staked on this thing and then it got retroactively funded, and so then I get benefit from that as well.
Oh yeah, that's juicy. I like that idea. I got that signal before anyone else did, and now look at how amazing this thing became.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so what happens if I do stake my whole bag though? This is like,
then it's like at the top of the list, and it's like way harder for anybody to compete. Like, this happened. Like, half of everything that's staked right now is one dude. It's the dude from Gnosis, and he staked on behalf of like 3 projects, which is why I know that like the sorting isn't quite working, because I don't see those projects near the top anytime I go sort
those
through
should
it.
be the top
And
3.
he put like, he put like double digit, I mean like 5 digits worth of USD into it. So those should be at the top. And yeah.
This is fascinating. I didn't think about that. We are seeing some folks are like just staking on their own projects with like a bunch of GTC to help pump them up.
That's what I would do. I have a grant in there for the blockchain meetup.
Yeah.
Can I just say real quick that somewhere in here between Gitcoin and Build Guild and all of this stuff, we seem to have built up enough trust to where when we YOLO out a project, somebody will just show up and literally sink like $50,000, $100,000 into the YOLO project based off trust of us alone that we coded something good enough to not lose their money. Like, let's just call that out and call that a win somewhere in here, because that's crazy.
For real.
But knock on a lot of wood though, man. That is like, we're trying the best we can not to lose money, but it's not like we paid for a giant audit here. Like, we did the best we could. I had a spot check. We've had other people spot check it, but it's like, we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, so far that contract still has money in it, and let's keep an eye on it. Like, it's scary. Let's not tempt the gods here.
I'm looking at it right now. There's 50K. There's 50K Gitcoins for a USD value of $141,000. Yeah, it's more than I was expecting, to be honest.
Clearly, people didn't get the idea of the tiny signal.
Yeah, take a tiny signal. Boom.
One question. So after the grants round, could they take that out, that stake out, or like?
They can. They can even during the grant round. We don't have a way to force that. So in theory, you could just forget about that and just leave it there forever.
What if is there thought in putting in a mechanism to like kind of when they withdraw their stake to like keep some of it, like a very small percentage or something, or like then it gives like a bit more risk in terms of just YOLOing this like massive amounts, or like that's not the type of
we want this to cost you as little as possible. As Kyle already mentioned, like, you're not getting anything out of it already, right? There's no intrinsic value here. So
I mean,
like
there's
we
a
want to
little
cost as
bit,
less
but
as possible.
yeah. Sorry, I really don't want to discount the work here because I do feel like there's some intrinsic value. We have seen that placement on the grants round does impact the amount of funding that comes in, which is why this is an awesome place to start. So I see it as like a sliding scale, right? Like the degens are going to ape in if they can curate stuff and get rewards, like cash hard rewards back. Us regens are like, let's start by curating and making sure that we're pumping up the projects that we know are great, and who cares if we get money back. So there's like some middle ground in this spectrum somewhere.
Like the main output from this is like stabilizing GTC value a bit more by like having people storing it for a while. Like that's.
I don't think that would be a side effect of these, because we don't force them to stake for a certain amount of time. In the first iteration, for example, I was letting people choose for how long they wanted to stake for before they staked. So you could say, I'm going to stake for a month, and then for 1 month, you cannot touch your GTC. That would probably have an impact on the tokenomics, I guess, because if you see GTC going down, you want to sell, you can't. But right now, I don't think it has any impact in that sense. You can always just unstake and do whatever you want.
But your conviction starts to go down, right? Like there is
Your
like a
conviction starts
loss
to go down.
Yeah. So can we dive into that? Just that little mechanic was something I didn't expect. You staked
Okay.
1 GTC and then you pulled it out and there was still like 0.99 there and it slowly was bleeding out. Like technically, could you stake 1 GTC on a bunch of people, then unstake them, then come back in and stake again and then unstake them? The fact that you're leaving some behind, like what happens if you stake on the same project and then unstake on the same project over and over again? There isn't some weird boost that happens there, right?
You could do that. You could game that. An easy way to fix that would be to basically make your staking values start from 0. And this is easy to do because all the math is off chain. The contract itself doesn't calculate anything. Essentially, instead of starting from 1, if you stake 1, we make you start from 0. And then we just count the increase on top of however much you staked. So if you stake and then try to restake again, you don't start from 0.99, but you start from 0.0000 something.
But even if you set it to do that like over like a day, even if you had like a more accelerated rate to fill it up, it would still prevent people from bouncing around and doing all of that. Probably, to some level.
If you make it go down faster, that would also limit.
Only goes up as fast as it goes down?
It doesn't. It goes down a little bit faster, I think.
That's what I was wondering. What if you set it up that way? I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry.
It should go down faster, I think.
Yeah. It's supposed to go down a little bit faster.
How long is that decay function? Like, how long would it take to get to 0?
Good question. I don't remember what I set the alpha to. Let me go and quickly check the contract. You guys can, the code. You guys can continue chatting. The decay is 0.8. So, and it's per day.
0.8
Nice.
per day.
Yeah.
This is super cool, by the way. I hope.
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys stood this up. I'm actually just now like starting to think about staking for a different initiative and an identity and so on. And so I'm starting to play around with all the concepts. So it's really cool to see people's projects ahead of time, go through this and think about like all the mechanics that can be played with. This is really cool.
Yeah, and I guess the way I want to like end this for you is there any way, anything that Moonshot can do to help support you and help get this message out? We would love to, I guess, send this video back to you, do whatever you and Austin want to do with it to get the message out there. But again, want to make sure that we offer any support you might need.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
If you think of something, you know where to find us.
Staking and taking a screenshot of it and posting a link to voting.gitcoin is a good idea. Like if you go stake on your favorite ones and just stake like 1 GTC on your favorite grants and then take a screenshot of it and tweet it, that is a big help. Like that organic help is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can send a tweet out from the Moonshot account as well,
Yeah, I think we already retweeted it, but we'll definitely get on that for sure.
And in some way, we don't want this to like super blow up either. Like this is a prototype, right? Like I'm comfortable like not having a bunch more GTC go into this contract.
The aforementioned risk earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, could you set the contract to only accept a certain amount of GTC, like the approvals like can't exceed 5 GTC or something like that to ensure that it's kept low?
Yeah.
Not at
Like,
this point, I think, but yeah.
Let's see. I don't know if you can, because there's not an ERC20 receiver. Yeah, there is. No, when you stake it, you approve and then you stake and then it goes out. It could check its current balance and not let you transfer tokens in. Yes. Yeah, it could, but it doesn't. But like this is one of those like talking about the Lindy effect that a walkie-talkie like just like getting money into this thing, getting this signal, and then having people to get their money out, like a round of that, like a full iteration, and then like to be able to continue on that is really powerful, I think. One other thing I wanted to really lean into is just like cutting corners. Like we had to cut corners to get this deployed, right? Like if we tried to make this thing perfect, the question earlier, why can't you like put in some amount to be able to unstake? Like we want as few features as possible and just get something out there and use it and see how people use it and then iterate on that, right? So it's just like that's one thing to really lean into here is how raw this build was. So yeah, good work, Daniele, building this so quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right on. Super props, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. Does anybody have any final questions before we go into some Gitcoin Passport Alpha? Nada? All right, man. Take it away, Brent. Floor is yours and Fahim's.
So I would like pull up a screen and start showing y'all a demo, but I think we're at the point where y'all should just go set up a passport. So why don't we do that? So I dropped a link in right here you can also just type in passport.gitcoin.co. Who in here hasn't actually set up a passport yet? I'm wondering if most people have. Hey, there's one.
Does somebody want to?
Come on, Emu. No, I'm just kidding. Emo, do you want to share screen and do it? Do it live, dog fooding style?
I haven't done this on the mainnet. I think a lot of us have maybe done it on the test net, but
yeah, it's actually I'm wondering if I think we did do it on mainnet. Go try mainnet for you, Kyle. I think we did actually do the testing on mainnet. We started at one point in time. We took the review site, so that is something I can show everybody. So yeah, I think this is mainnet here.
It says it's mainnet, and I got nothing in here.
Yeah, maybe we didn't before.
So let's go to my Gitcoin profile here.
So this part's not live yet. This part will be live tomorrow, but I can show this by doing the demo part. So like if you go to Trust.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to showcase like I've got a bunch of these things connected here.
Mm-hmm.
I done as hard as AF. But none of them are over here. So should I just, if I click my Bright ID account, are we ready for this?
The Bright ID is the only one that's in flux right now per the Bright IT team. We'll get back to that.
Okay. So then I'll connect proof of humanity.
There you go.
It's having me sign a transaction. Message, I'm going to rug you. What?
I'm taking you for all your words.
All right, sign. My stamp credential. Cool. I'm assuming you pulled this from somewhere. Like I have no idea what this is.
Yeah, so we'll have to get more into explainers at another point of like what this data is. But basically these are the objects that are saved on the Ceramic network. I could let Fahim go into more technical detail if you wanted.
So that's so when you make that call, it's going back to an IM server, which is just one of our servers that's generating a verifiable credential for that stamp or that like identity provider. And then you're getting that back and you're seeing that as like a JSON format.
Oh, cool. All right. How many can I do here? We'll just keep rolling.
That's the beauty of it. Let's keep going. One of the things that we've considered in this when designing this is that we want this to go this fast. Like if you can come in and do most of your stamps in a matter of minutes, then we've done this successfully. If it takes you more time because you get into each one and each one's somewhat complicated, then like that kind of defeats the purpose of going back and using social signals that you've had before that prove that you're non-civil to use now to prove that you're non-civil, right? Like, so that's one big design consideration we have, is that Kyle should be able to do this in a matter of minutes.
Boom, 5 of them, less than 5 minutes.
When you click on the Google one to verify, did you get some sort of like OAuth login to continue that we didn't see?
Yeah, it pops up. It pops each of these things up in both a new window, and then my MetaMask triggers to sign a message as well.
Nice.
I don't have a Facebook account, otherwise I would do that one.
Yep. What's happening in those OAuth sessions, and again, these are all things that we're going to have to like get better documentation and explaining. One of it is just like launching this in the market and seeing what people say. Like Kyle was like, what is this data? Like, cool, check. Customer wants to, our user wants to know, what is this data? Like, and just start racking up that feedback to see like how many people like did understand or didn't understand some of these things. So in a large way, much like what Austin was saying, like this is still kind of an alpha release, right? We're trying to get feedback as we go to add color around those edges. I can tell. To answer a question that you had, Kevin, or Emu, that you're kind of getting at, is when these sessions are using OAuth, basically all they're doing is they're coming in here to authorize you or to use OAuth, and the IAM server is taking all that, the confirmation that it gets from that, wrapping it into a verified credential and printing it to your profile, and then closing out that OAuth. So none of that OAuth data saves in that credential. None of it saves to a database anywhere. None of it saves at all, because the goal is to protect your personally identifying information, right? It just saves a verified credential. It saves that credential that states like, we have verified that at this time. Boom.
And all the data is also network agnostic, because it's all saved on Ceramic network. So you can, we haven't actually implemented anything to do this yet, but you could potentially just go across like different networks. And if we need to bring that information in, that's a great part of this, is that it's scalable, and like we can just keep adding more stamps and more functionality.
Yep. I think one of the fun things was people have already been talking about, okay, how do I take a score of somebody's and like print it into like an NFT and then go use that around? That's a great use case. There are other considerations that we'll have to continue to design for in this. So as it stands right now, you can't disconnect the stamp, but there's a lot of reasons why you would want to disconnect a stamp. But here, if we now rolled in the feature of disconnecting a stamp, which we have some plans for that, that's probably going to happen, so that you can build up your profile or break down your profile. But if we were to introduce that, and we were to introduce the ability to print to an NFT a Gitcoin trust bonus score, if we were to do both of those, then in theory, someone could go build a profile, build it all the way up, print an NFT, break it all the way down, go start a new profile, new thing, Sybil attack it, right? And build a new profile all the way up, print it with the same stamped data, because all it's printing is the score, and break it all the way down, and just continue doing that over and over to attack that system. So there's a lot of things where you're just like, crap, we have to have mechanisms in place for that if we actually let somebody print a trust bonus score there. SBTs, exactly. So like there's a lot of like exploration space, and it's when you start to run into these problems that you're like, this is why people haven't already built great solutions for this, because like you have a lot of design considerations that you have to do. What's really cool about all of this is that we do believe that with the way that we've done verified credentials, the way we built out this ceramic profile in this network, we set up the base layer to do a lot of experimentation on top. So what was it, Chase, you asked earlier if this was built on Scaffold ETH? No, this isn't built on Scaffold ETH. The passport part is not. But when I'm thinking about like, okay, how do we do a staking mechanism that ties in with the passport? Like the staking itself probably happens on an external site. It somehow passport somehow goes to verify it in some sort of way that a staking has happened. So that experimentation now happens on Scaffold ETH. I don't see any other way that we would do it but Scaffold ETH. So now you start to think like, okay, you have this base layer network, but then you think about all the innovation that can happen around it. A lot of that stuff can just be done over and over with prototypes on Scaffold ETH, and should be, to be building fast, right? So like that's where I'm really excited, because we spent, in my opinion, we spent 12 weeks building a very strong foundation for us to experiment a whole lot of stuff on top of.
Have you seen any like iterations come out of like just like community of like people already starting to do those things, or is it too early since it's not fully live?
Too early. We're going to start writing up documentations and splitting out the components in it into things that people can pick up, fork, and play with in the next weeks after it goes live. There's a hackathon that's coming up that we're prepping it for, so that gives us like a hard date that'll push us towards those goals. But even as much as like the IPM this week, earlier today, I was like, maybe it's time to now break off one team to start documenting those things and getting them ready for other developers to pick up. So we'll probably be doubling down on that after GR14. We just kind of prioritize a lot of our efforts to make sure we are good for GR14. So hopefully soon.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe a good way to like that's a good segue into like the next piece of this is, hey, what are you guys doing next? Whether it pertains to Depop or Gitcoin Passport as well as Moonshot, the answer is probably the same thing. And wanted to share that update with everybody as we prioritize our next initiative. And what we've been really focusing on is how do we add value to the DAO as a whole? How do we find ways to add utility to GTC? That's where we really want to spend our time and energy as Moonshot Collective going forward. And so what we're hoping to pick up next as a core initiative is identity staking. Brent, as you can tell, is super excited about identity staking, as he's mentioned it from about 305 to 348 a handful of times. And I'm excited about it as well. And that's why we have Brent coming along from the Depop team over here. And again, we're hopefully going to store something within the passport to help improve the trust bonus score based on a GTC stake. We'll make sure that those levels are very incremental, and that way whales can't necessarily go and forge the whole system. And that's going to be our first iteration as a potential prototype. And as we get into that, and then we can improve trust bonus scores and see how users actually use that, we plan to explore different mechanisms such as cost of forgery and slashing mechanisms. So seeing how, Danielle, you were using GTC to stake on conviction voting for grant curation, it was really interesting to hear you talk about those staking mechanisms as we set forth to explore staking on identities. So I wanted to share that as an update to the group as a whole as we actually start to plan on building that next and utilizing the work that Brent just showed. And shout out to Fahim for contributing a ton of your time and effort to making that go live for GR14. And I think maybe we'll stop there to see if there's any questions about Passport as a whole, identity staking, any of that nature. Brent, what makes you most excited about identity staking?
Just the problems that we have to solve. Like, I think the reason why people haven't just readily done this is because all these things are really complicated. Identity staking itself, there's like layers to it. You can start by staking on yourself, then you can stake on other people, then you can start getting into people hunting identities, right? So like if someone looks like they're a bad actor and they're staking a whole bunch of people and they're staking themselves, and somebody can prove that somehow, then they could slash that staking and get a reward for it. So now you've started to like roll a community effort into checking these things out. So like that is like a big area to explore after that. But even like when we talk about the staking right in front of us. So like one problem that hit Fahim and I while we were talking one day, like realized was, okay, if you can disconnect a stamp, but you can stake and you can get a verification on a different stamp, like a VC, then our user could just stake some in a spot, do a verification with a VC, unstake that amount, send it to a different account, let them stake it, let them do a VC on it, and then keep doing that process, and you've gamed the system, right? If you can disconnect stamps like that, if you can just you could just completely game the system. And so we're like, wow, we have more thinking to do on this. So I think like that's one of those things where it's like, hey, cool, this wasn't an easy problem to fix. This was a complicated problem. We have all the tooling. We're very excited about getting into it. And had we not spent 12 weeks building out all this infrastructure, realizing these problems wouldn't have come like so fast for us. So like I think it's just really exciting to like think, hey, these are big problems to solve There's reasons why people haven't solved these yet. And if we can solve them, we can actually do a lot of really good for this ecosystem.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. I think that really highlights the foundation that Passport sets for a lot of this innovation to happen. And we hope to continue to innovate within Moonshot, within the Passport and the identity space as a whole. So super excited to get that going. Really hoping to have that team mobilized and started by the end of the month. But as you can tell, Brent is tied up with getting this Passport out the door for GR14. And so we'll allow the team to focus on that. But again, hopefully by the end of the month, we'll mobilize the team to start kicking that work off, and hopefully share a lot more there.
Yeah, as is Fahim as well. Fahim has pushed a lot more code than me. A lot more code than me.
You can color me shocked.
0. I just talk a lot. I don't push.
Cool. Does anybody have questions or thoughts on the identity space as it relates to Passport? Cool. And then I think there was one other update email you're hoping to send out.
Yeah, I think one of the main things was also about like the governance contracts as well, and like what we're going to do in terms of like the current governance contract, what that looks like, and like how Moonshot's going to be involved in like evolving that into a next iteration.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give that update. So obviously there's a governance contract sitting behind the DAO, and it's allowed us to do a lot of great things, propose a ton of budgets, so on and so forth, all the things that a governance contract does. And we realized that there could have been faults within that initial iteration, and it's not serving our stewards and our community as well as our DAO the best that it possibly could. So we are going to set forth to understand what that current contract looks like, and understand what the needs of the stewards and other stakeholders that do care about the governor contract, and understand where we need to take that to improve it from what is now the alpha version of the governor contract to hopefully what the beta version is, using different templates from Open Zeppelin. So again, our first priority there is to understand what it is right now, what problems our stewards are having there, and how we continue to iterate that contract to best serve our community, our stewards, and our DAO. So the order of operations there again is like analysis within that, and proposing a solution to the community via the governance forum, and seeing what kind of feedback we get there to continue to iterate what that solution will be, build said solution, and test that and continue to iterate that. And again, that's hopefully going to be started and kicked off by the end of this week. And we would love participation from the community to help test, to help find ideas, and how to continue to iterate that to a solution that does serve our stewards, community, so on and so forth, and all the other stakeholders that interact with that contract. So I think that's the update. Email, let me know if there's anything else you want given there.
No, I think that was it. Just to kind of pass that context around of like it's happening, what Moonshot's kind of being tasked with the work on for the DAO, and like how we're providing that value. I think that's like the main goal. So super solid. Does anybody have any questions there? Anything? Nada. Cool. I guess I mean, I don't have anything else. I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to share in the last 5 minutes. Again, though, I'm just going to post the Slido link if anybody kind of has in the suggestions on ways to make these things better, kind of giving the community like content that they want. Just go ahead and fill it out. Yeah, does anybody else have anything they want to share in the last 5 minutes? If not,
in the Slido, the questions last time I looked at it were basically like, how do I get involved? And yeah, I think like right now the best way for people to get involved is to continue to come to like this monthly call, and then like also the weekly Moonshot context call, which is on Wednesdays at like 8:30 Mountain Time. So however you do the math to convert, 8:05, excuse me, on Wednesdays. So yeah, that's like the best place to stay up to date on what's going on and where opportunities are. Just pull that out.
Perfect.
Yeah, good shout out. Like that's like definitely a good call, because that's a lot of the questions that we always get of how people like can contribute, and not necessarily like there's never opportunities, but staying as close as possible if you're interested in this kind of stuff, like to help test things, really just getting together and having fun times like these, the more the merrier. But if nobody has any questions, we can give everybody 4 minutes back to do whatever you please. Cool.
See you
Later,
later.
guys. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Great work, everyone. Later.
Bye, everyone.